Ladies and gentlemen, when you're in a season of waiting, it's easy to think you've been forgotten. You pray, you fast, you push, and you strive, but it feels like heaven is silent. The doors don't open, the opportunities don't come, and the progress seems painfully slow. But what you must understand is that delay is not denial. It's divine preparation. God is not punishing you by making you wait. He's preparing you for what He has already planned. There is a process that comes before the promise. Every time God is about to give you something big, He first stretches your patience, strengthens your faith, and develops your character. You don't walk into a blessing unprepared. You grow into it. The delay you're experiencing isn't a void, it's a classroom. It's where God trains you, molds you, and equips you for the weight of what He's about to place in your hand. Think about a seed buried in the soil. It's in the dark, isolated, unseen. But deep beneath the surface, growth is happening. Roots are forming. Foundation is being laid. The seed isn't dead. It's being developed. You may feel hidden right now, like your efforts are unnoticed and your prayers unheard. But something is happening underneath. The delay is working on you, even if you can't see it. We often want the spotlight before we're ready for the responsibility. We want the platform before we've built the discipline. We want the blessing, but we aren't always prepared for the burden that comes with it. And so in His love and wisdom, God delays the arrival, not to deprive us, but to protect us. Because what good is a blessing if it breaks you when you receive it? What good is a gift if it overwhelms you because your character isn't strong enough to carry it? This divine delay also exposes your motives. In the waiting season, you begin to see what's really driving you. Are you after the blessing, or are you chasing the blesser? Are you trusting in the timing, or are you trying to take shortcuts? Are you anchored in faith, or are you swayed by frustration? Delay reveals what's in your heart, and that revelation is often more valuable than the destination. Sometimes, the longer you wait, the more you're tempted to settle. But settling is the enemy of destiny. When God has something big for you, He won't let you settle for small, so He keeps you uncomfortable. He closes the wrong doors. He holds back the lesser so you don't miss the greater. And in that tension, you either break down or you break through. You either give up or you grow up. God's timing is not like ours. What feels late to you is still on time in heaven's calendar. When you understand that delay is preparation, your whole perspective shifts. You stop begging for shortcuts and start embracing the stretch. You stop comparing your journey to others and start trusting your own process. You begin to realize that what God is doing in you is just as important as what He will do for you. Preparation seasons are often quiet seasons. God does His best work in silence. You may not feel movement, but there is momentum. You may not see change, but there is transformation. And when the time is right, what's been planted in private will show up in public. But you cannot rush this. You cannot microwave destiny. There's a maturity that comes only through time, through trust. Joseph had a dream, but before he ruled in the palace, he was thrown into a pit, sold as a slave, and locked in a prison. David was anointed king, but he spent years running from Saul, living in caves and fighting battles long before he ever touched the throne. Even Jesus waited 30 years before performing his first miracle. Delay is not a curse, it is part of the call. The enemy will try to use delay to discourage you. He'll whisper lies that God has forgotten you, that your prayers are pointless, that your faith is in vain. But delay is where you prove the devil wrong. It's where your praise becomes pure because it's not attached to performance. It's where your trust is deepened, not by blessings received, but by promises believed. When God delays, he's not holding something from you, he's holding it for you. Because the greater the calling, the greater the preparation, the deeper the purpose, the longer the process. And what he's preparing you for is not small. It's not average. It's not ordinary. It's something big, something that will demand every ounce of growth you've gained in the wait. There's something powerful about the moments that come right after pain, confusion, and loss. Those moments when you feel like you're hanging on by a thread, when you're praying but nothing seems to shift, when you've cried all your tears and all you have left is the strength to breathe. It's in these moments that something greater is often around the corner. The biggest blessings often come after the biggest battles, not because God is testing you for the sake of testing, but because he's preparing you to handle something bigger than you imagined. Battles reveal what's real. They strip away the unnecessary, the shallow, the convenient. They show you who you really are, and more importantly, who God really is in your life. When you're in a fight for your future, for your identity, for your faith, you start to discover a level of strength, resilience, and faith that comfort could never teach you. Blessings that are born out of battles don't just show up. They are earned through tears, perseverance, and a decision to keep standing when everything in you wants to sit down and quit. There are some things God can only give to people who've been through something, because the weight of the blessing requires the muscles that are only built in battle. If you've ever seen a tree that's grown in constant sunshine without ever facing the wind, you'll notice it has shallow roots. But when storms come, the trees that survive are the ones that grew deep roots in resistance. Your battles are not in vain. They are digging your roots deeper, anchoring you in truth, in faith, in a strength you didn't know you had. And let's be honest, battles are not glamorous. They're not Instagram worthy. They're messy, raw, lonely, and often misunderstood by those around you. People see the outcome, but not the agony. They celebrate your blessing, but weren't there for your battle. They clap for the breakthrough, but never heard your cries in the midnight hour. That's why your blessing, when it comes, will not just be a celebration. It'll be a testimony of what you survived, a testimony of who you became, a testimony of the God who didn't leave you in your darkest hour. Some of the greatest people in history, biblical and beyond, didn't get to their promise without passing through pain. Moses faced rejection and ran to the wilderness. Esther risked her life to save her people. Job lost everything and still held on to his faith. Every major blessing in Scripture is preceded by a significant battle. And the same principle applies today. The size of your struggle is often a clue to the size of your calling. The intensity of your battle points to the impact of your blessing. We often want God to deliver us from the battle, but sometimes He delivers us through it. He lets you walk through the fire so you can come out refined. He lets the storm rage so you can learn to speak peace to it. He lets you wrestle, not to break you, but to bless you. Jacob wrestled with God and came out with a limp and a new name. That limp wasn't weakness, it was proof he had been marked by the fight. Some of the pain you carry is actually a sign that you made it through something meant to destroy you. There's also something sacred about the endurance that comes from prolonged struggle. When things don't change overnight, when you have to keep showing up day after day without seeing the results, that's where real faith is born. Not faith in outcomes, but faith in God's character. That's where you learn to trust His silence, to believe in His plan even when it doesn't make sense, and to worship not because of what He's done, but because of who He is. The blessing that follows that kind of faith is never surface level. It's life-changing. Sometimes God lets you lose certain battles so you can win the war. There are things you thought were losses, but they were really lessons. People who left you, opportunities that slipped away, prayers that weren't answered the way you expected. All of it was shaping you. All of it was building a version of you that could handle the next level. Because the blessing God has for you doesn't just elevate your life, it expands your capacity. It's going to ask more from you, require more of you, and stretch you beyond anything you've known. That's why the battle was so hard. That's why the resistance was so strong. It wasn't just about what you were going through, it was about what you were growing into. Even in the midst of the battle, God never stops being God. He is present in the pain, active in the silence, and sovereign in the struggle. You may feel abandoned, but you are being equipped. You may feel overlooked, but you are being prepared. You may feel delayed, but you are being positioned. Every scar is a reminder that you made it. Every tear is a seed. And every time you chose faith over fear, you were moving closer to the breakthrough. Before God brings something new and significant into your life, He often starts by removing what no longer serves your purpose. This removal can be confusing, painful, and even feel like rejection, but in reality, it's divine alignment. God removes before He rewards because He knows that sometimes your hands are too full of what you think you need to receive what He knows you need. The process of subtraction is not to harm you, but to create room for multiplication. What feels like loss is often the beginning of preparation for something far greater. We often hold on tightly to people, habits, environments, and opportunities that feel familiar, even if they are limiting our growth. It's human nature to cling to what's comfortable, but growth rarely happens in comfort. God sees what you cannot. He sees the relationships that will drain you in the next season, the distractions that will delay your purpose, and the attachments that will prevent you from walking fully in what He has for you. So in His mercy, He starts to remove them, not to punish you, but to prepare you. This removal doesn't always come with warning. Sometimes it's sudden. Sometimes it's slow and subtle. You may experience a friendship that starts to fade, a job that ends unexpectedly, or a door that seems to shut right when you thought you were about to walk through it. It doesn't make sense at first, and you might question whether you did something wrong, but over time, if you stay sensitive to His voice, you begin to realize that what left was never meant to last. That what walked away wasn't aligned with your destiny. That what felt like a closed chapter was really just the turning of the page. God is a gardener, and like any skilled gardener, he prunes the branches so that the plant can grow stronger. Pruning isn't pretty. It involves cutting, shaping, and removing what looks alive but isn't producing fruit. In the same way, God removes things from your life that may appear beneficial on the surface, but are actually stunting your growth beneath. The people who no longer pour into you, the dreams that were built on ego instead of purpose, the habits that served your past but cannot sustain your future. These things must go so that what's meant for you can grow. We don't like this part of the process because it requires trust without answers. It asks us to release without knowing what's coming next. It demands faith in God's plan, even when the plan feels like chaos. But make no mistake, removal is strategic. God never takes without a reason. Every subtraction has purpose. Every ending holds the seed of a new beginning. Every goodbye is setting the stage for a greater hello. Sometimes what God removes is not external, but internal. He starts taking away pride, fear, bitterness, and insecurity. These are invisible weights that we often carry without even realizing how much they're slowing us down. You can't enter your next season with a heart full of offense or a mind full of doubt. So God brings situations that expose those hidden things, not to shame you, but to cleanse you. He will not allow internal dysfunction to follow you into external elevation. He's more concerned with your character than your comfort, because your character is what will sustain you when the spotlight shines. This removal process can also feel like isolation. You may find yourself in a season where God strips away the noise, the crowd, the applause, and even the affirmation. It feels lonely, but it's not abandonment. It's refinement. God is getting you alone so he can speak clearly, so he can strengthen you without the distractions, so he can show you who you are without the influence of everyone else's opinions. Because if you need the crowd to feel valuable, you're not ready for the calling. And if you can't handle the quiet, you're not prepared for the noise that will come with the blessing. Many times what God removes is what you prayed to keep. You begged for that relationship to work, that opportunity to last, that situation to go your way. But God, in his sovereignty, saw what was hidden from you. He knew that keeping it would cost you more than letting it go. So he did what a loving father does. He removed it even when it broke your heart, because his goal is not just your happiness, it's your wholeness. And sometimes healing starts with letting go. When you understand this principle that God removes before he rewards, you begin to see your losses differently. You stop seeing them as setbacks and start seeing them as setups. You stop chasing what left and start embracing what's coming. You begin to realize that empty spaces are not signs of failure. They are invitations for fulfillment. That silence is not absence, it's preparation. That doors closing are not the end, they are divine redirection. There is a sacredness to the season of removal. It's uncomfortable, yes. It's disorienting, absolutely. But it is also holy. It is the place where God is clearing the clutter, cutting away the unnecessary, and creating space for something far more meaningful than you could have built on your own. It's the deep breath before the blessing. It's the breaking before the breakthrough. It's not the end of your story. It's the clearing of the path for the next chapter to unfold with clarity, strength, and purpose. Faith is often the easiest thing to claim when everything is going well, when doors are opening, when prayers are being answered, when life feels like it's moving according to plan. It's not hard to say you trust God. But real faith, the kind that's deep, unshakable, and rooted, is tested most right before the breakthrough. That's the moment when you're standing at the edge of everything you've hoped for, and yet nothing around you looks like it's going to happen. It's the point where promises feel distant, silence feels deafening, and you begin to wonder if you misunderstood God entirely. This kind of test doesn't come with a warning. It sneaks up on you when you've invested everything, your energy, your hope, your time, into believing that something is about to change. And then suddenly the progress stops. The doors close. The people disappear. The resources dry up. You're left with nothing but your belief, and even that starts to feel like it's on shaky ground. That's the proving ground of faith, not in the abundance, but in the absence, not in clarity, but in confusion, not in victory, but in the valley right before it. Right before the breakthrough, God often goes silent, not because He's distant, but because He's watching. He's observing how you respond when you don't have all the answers. He's measuring your maturity, your resilience, your ability to trust Him when the evidence doesn't support the promise. This is the moment where many give up, not realizing how close they are. They let go of the dream. They walk away from the call. They settle for less because they mistook the test for a denial. But in reality, the silence was never a sign of absence. It was the final step before fulfillment. In this space, your emotions will try to overpower your faith. Fear will speak louder than truth. Doubt will question everything you've been holding on to. You'll replay every failure, every delay, every unanswered prayer, and begin to wonder if you've been foolish for believing so hard for so long. But this is exactly where faith is meant to rise, not because of what you feel, but because of what you know, that God is faithful, that He doesn't start something He won't finish, that His timing, though mysterious, is always intentional. One of the hardest lessons to learn is that faith isn't about controlling outcomes. It's about trusting the character of the one who does. You may not understand the process, but you can trust the person behind it. God never wastes a waiting season. He doesn't delay without reason. Sometimes the breakthrough is held back, not because you're not ready, but because the circumstances around you are still being aligned. There are details being arranged, people being positioned, hearts being prepared. What looks like a pause is often divine synchronization behind the scenes. Think about the stories in Scripture. So many of them involve this exact pattern. Abraham waited decades for Isaac. Joseph had a dream and then spent years in slavery and prison before the palace. Hannah endured the shame of barrenness before giving birth to Samuel. In each case, the moment right before the promise came was often the hardest, the loneliest, the most painful. But it was also the most important, because that's where faith was tested, purified, and proven real. God could give you the breakthrough at any moment, but what He's more interested in is what the process is producing in you. Are you becoming the kind of person who can carry the blessing with humility, with gratitude, with wisdom, Are you learning to lean not on your own understanding, but on His Word alone? Are you grounded enough that success won't swell your ego or failure won't destroy your identity? These are the questions that get answered in the waiting. And while the test may not feel like it has an expiration date, God knows exactly how long to stretch you without breaking you. He knows when your faith has been forged strong enough to carry the next season. He knows when your heart is aligned with His will, and He knows exactly how to bring the breakthrough in a way that not only blesses you, but also brings Him glory. Because the blessing is not just about what you receive, it's about who you become in the process of waiting for it. There is a kind of faith that doesn't need to see to believe. A kind of faith that stands firm even when the winds of uncertainty blow strong. A kind of faith that refuses to quit, not because of emotion, but because of conviction. That's the kind of faith that grows right before the breakthrough. It doesn't shout, it doesn't panic. It simply endures. It holds the line. It keeps showing up. It keeps praying, keeps praising, keeps trusting, because it knows that the same God who made the promise is the same God who will keep it. There's a divine timing to everything in life, and when God is preparing to give you something big, the environment around you often begins to shift in ways that don't make sense at first. You might notice doors you were counting on suddenly closing, relationships changing, opportunities vanishing, or even your interests and desires beginning to evolve. These shifts aren't accidental. They are intentional signs that your current season is ending and a new one is about to begin. Now, God doesn't just drop blessings randomly. He prepares the soil before planting the seed, and those environmental shifts are part of that preparation. Often, these changes start subtly. You begin to feel disconnected from things that once felt comfortable. Places that used to bring you joy now feel empty. Conversations that once energized you now seem shallow. You look around and realize that you no longer belong in the space you're standing in. That restlessness you feel isn't a sign of discontent. It's a whisper from heaven that something new is coming and you're being positioned for it. God will often allow discomfort to push you out of what's familiar, because growth and comfort rarely live in the same space. These shifts might also feel like loss at first. People walk away, doors shut, plans fall apart. But what seems like rejection is often redirection. When God is about to elevate you, He protects you from things that could sabotage your next level. Not everyone can go with you. Not every opportunity is designed to carry the weight of your purpose. Sometimes God closes a door because what's behind it would delay your destiny. He's not punishing you. He's positioning you. The shift may sting, but it's sacred. There's a rhythm to how God works. Before He promotes, He prepares. And preparation often requires isolation. You might find yourself in a season where your phone stops ringing, your calendar clears, and the crowd thins. At first, this feels like loneliness, but it's really alignment. God is creating space around you so He can speak to you more clearly. He's stripping away the noise so you can hear His direction without distraction. He's removing external voices so you can tune into the internal shift that's taking place within you. Pay attention to the internal shifts as well. When God is ready to do something big, your perspective starts to change. You no longer think the way you used to. What once seemed important now feels irrelevant. You crave depth instead of distraction, purpose instead of popularity, calling instead of comfort. This is the Holy Spirit stretching you from the inside out, pulling you into the mindset and maturity required for the next level. The shift in your spirit is often the first sign that the shift in your circumstances is on its way. This kind of spiritual preparation often comes with an increase in pressure. You may find yourself dealing with unexpected challenges, intense emotional battles, or an overwhelming sense of being stretched beyond your limits. That pressure isn't punishment, it's preparation. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Oil is pressed out of olives. Wine comes from crushed grapes. God uses pressure to produce something in you that ease never could. It's a refining process that gets rid of what's not useful, so only what's pure and powerful remains. Another way the shift shows up is through divine discontent. You're not unhappy, but you're unsettled. You know there's more, even if you can't see it yet. You feel the weight of potential that hasn't yet been realized. This divine discontent is God's way of awakening you to the bigger picture. He doesn't want you settling in places where you were only meant to pass through. That restlessness is not a sign that something's wrong. It's evidence that you were made for more, and that more is drawing near. During this transition, God often reveals new visions, dreams, or insights that seem far beyond your current reality. You'll get glimpses of what could be, even though nothing around you looks like it yet. This is where faith becomes essential. The vision God gives you is a preview, not a promise that it will happen overnight. The environment may not match the dream at first, but the dream is a signal that the environment is about to change. God shows you what's next to keep you moving, to keep you hoping, to keep you preparing. As the shift continues, you'll start noticing confirmation all around you. Scriptures will suddenly speak to your situation. Messages will resonate deeply with where you are. Strangers will say things that affirm what you've been sensing in prayer. This isn't coincidence. It's divine orchestration. God is too intentional to leave you without signs. When He's getting ready to release something big, He gives you small confirmations to build your confidence, to assure you that the shift is real, and to encourage you not to give up in the middle of the transition. Sometimes the biggest shift happens in silence. You won't always have clarity. You won't always have applause. But if you're sensitive to the Spirit, you'll know when something is moving. You'll feel the weight of change in your spirit before you see it in your surroundings. And if you remain faithful in the shift, if you keep walking even when the path isn't clear, you will find yourself exactly where you're meant to be when the blessing arrives.